I'm sure you guys are sick of me by now, so this is my last time, so you're welcome. JJ, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you taking the time out of having recently opened a restaurant and getting one ready to come up here. Give me just a quick rundown where the Henry's at now, which you took over about 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, and then we can talk a bit about FieldTrip, which is an excellent name of a restaurant.
Thank you. Yes, I have a restaurant on 31st Street between 5th and 6th called The Henry. Recently took that over from an existing food god. And it's my typical food that you know who I am, which is Pan-African. There's about 17 items on the menu. We're open for dinner right now, and then we'll go to an all-day menu starting on Monday.
Okay. And then setting aside time for FieldTrip.
Yeah, FieldTrip is my grain bowl concept, all about rices around the world. That's something I've personally been working on for 4 years. And it's about mother grains and granddaddy grains that made up the rice culture system. So FieldTrip is a name for rice fields. Trips for around the world, all the places I've been and have studied these rices. And our slogan is Rice is Culture.
So somebody who's cooked in some great kitchens, and Cecil most recently, what made you decide, hey, I'm going to go fast casual and do a $12 bowl of stuff?
Originally, FieldTrip was going to be a sit-down restaurant, very similar to Momofuku. Uh-huh. That model worked. Me and my business partner looked at it, studied it, and then we could never get the P&L to match up to even get to break even with the locations we were looking at, and would people actually come to sit down for rice? So we went back and we looked and we looked and we said, rice is at the center of the plate of everybody's household. We all grew up on it. And this is something somebody can truly eat 2 to 3 times a week. How can we make it cool? How can we make it tasty? But also, how can we make people want to sit in there and potentially eat in the restaurant for 45 minutes? And then the model started to take place. So we want quick service. Mm-hmm. But we're not going quick service in saturated markets. I think people think quick service has to be in this dense market of 13% density, but then everybody's fighting over the same density, and then you're only getting 3% of the dents. Mm-hmm. So we're going in what we consider outer boroughs. I know Harlem is not an outer borough. Many people think of it as an outer borough. It is part of Manhattan. So we're starting there. And then if it's able to grow, we'll do the Bronx, we'll do Brooklyn, we'll do Queens. If we're able to take it outside of New York, if we're that lucky, we'll do places like Charlotte, Oakland, we'll do Miami, we'll do downtown LA. We'll do places where people are truly craving to eat good, but the bigger brands are coming later. And if you watch in Harlem, Shake Shack's about to open, Chipotle's about to open. And I don't mean like Harlem, like by Columbia, even though that's Harlem, but the density's high there. Mm-hmm. I'm saying like in the heart of Harlem, they're just starting to open, which sucks for me, but means that I'm on to something.
Right. And what's the price point?
The price point will be from $7 to $13, and beer and wine will be $5 on tap.
Oh, okay, good. So
happy hour all day.
Yeah. And you open for breakfast, right? Yeah.
I think we could do breakfast, yeah, but we'll be open 10 to 10, and hopefully grow to breakfast. Just because it's a working class community, we're right in front of the train. We're on 115. We're between 115th and 116th, and Lenox right in front of the 2 and the 3. So I have stood out there at 4:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, and it's a lot of people going to work. So maybe a coffee window. Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know if we can. I didn't raise that much money to be able to chill and say, hey, let's waste it on R&D.
Yeah, let's wait. Yeah. So with an ingredient like rice. Like everybody thinks they know rice, and it's such a a personal thing with family, you know, because if you're Cuban, you know what Cuban rice is. If you're Dominican, you've got your idea of rice. If you're from different parts of Asia, you've got your own rice. Like, how do you tell a different story, and how do you basically say, no, this is all that rice can be, because it's more than Uncle Ben in a bag.
Yeah, I grew up on that stuff. Not good. Uncle Ben in the bag, and probably a lot of you grew up on Uncle Ben in the bag too. No, it is. I worked, so I'm not cooking these traditional styles of rices from around the world. I'm literally getting the rice from this specific place from around the world. So I've been working with Glenn Roberts and a rice researcher out of Cornell. So I will have a rice that Glenn has been growing now a little bit more, because I'm going to start purchasing it, is black China rice, which we all know is forbidden black rice. But that will come from me, from what I've seen black rice cook, is black pineapple fried rice, right? Mm-hmm. That's just something that we all know. You
had it at the Cecil, right?
I did have it at the Cecil, yeah. Mm-hmm. That was my R&D ground for that. So you have black pineapple fried rice, and it will come with, you won't be able to build your own bowl because you need to understand the flavor profile first. So there'll be this own section that will be composed and curated. And then there'll be Carolina Gold. There'll be, which we'll call the rice of the Americas. There'll be just broken brown rice, which we'll do like brown rice and beans. There'll be a sticky rice coming from the mountains of the Philippines. So rices that I know I can get my hands on, but I'm also contacting rice farmers on a daily basis. I get inquiries from time to time. So I have a rice farmer out of Brazil that's interested. I'm trying to get this West African rice to come back into the United States, or be able to get shipped back into the United States. So the cooking techniques are how I envision it, not how your grandmother made it or your auntie, because I don't want to get into any debates that it's wrong.
My grandmother didn't make rice, and so I was really deprived. Your journey as a chef, I found it interesting when you left the Cecil and Cecil ended. You did the stint, kind of the first pop-up thing with the Chef's Club, and kind of set the tone there. And then taking over the Henry and then starting a fast casual joint. It is not a typical journey for a chef. What are the choices you've made as a chef that have allowed you to have this different path? And how much was choice and how much was you having to improvise because opportunities were different?
Yeah, I mean, opportunities for me have been really different. I pay attention to what the old chefs have done and how they've done it, who's done what well, who hasn't done things well. How can I take that path, but maybe if I would have done this, what this chef has done, and then do this, maybe it would work out better for me. I mean, people believe that I get 1,000 phone calls a day for what I've done. I maybe get one phone call every 6 months for something, or maybe a year, but it's nothing that ever sticks to the wall. So everything is really something I'm curating, or I'm calling a friend. That's how Chef's Club started. A buddy of mine, when I was Forbes 30 Under 30, Jerron Smith, who's Steph Curry's CMO, who worked for President Barack Obama, I called him, I said, hey man, I'm in a jam, Cecil's closing, I'm leaving, I gotta get out of here. What do you think I should do? I only know you but so much, but you seem like you have all your ducks in a row, and you seem like you've taken this odd course that many other people would never believe. How you worked at Nike, then you worked for President Barack Obama, now you work with, how did that even happen? He's like, literally you have to call a friend. So think of somebody that really, truly believes in you and call them and ask them for help. And I called Aaron, who booked all the chefs at Chef's Club, and I said, hey Aaron, I wanna do a rice pop-up at Chef's Club counter. He said, no chef wants to cook at Chef's Club counter. You're crazy. I said, no, I wanna just I wanna test this at Chef's Club counter. I have a little bit of money I can put into it, not knowing that the owners of Chef's Club have more money than God.
Could you take that request book? You'd be like,
I tried to, yeah. And they were like, hey, yeah, nobody wants to do this. Chef's Club counter really doesn't have an identity. Maybe you can help us with this identity. And we did this pop-up all about rice, and it sold out in 24 hours. We opened another day, it sold out. And then I was like, maybe I can actually put butts in the seat. And that means a lot for a chef if you can actually put people into seats. So we did that, and Stefan came to me 2 weeks later and said, I'm changing the model at Chef's Club. I think you'd be a good person to start it up. Would you mind doing this residency program? And at that moment, I wasn't thinking about doing full service. I was like, I need to raise money. I'm looking for an investor. I'm the only person I ever asked money for was my mom and my dad before. What am I doing out here? And then my partner was like, hey, you do it. We'll probably get some people in the dining room that'd be interested about our concept. You have a place to test and do some things. And I was only supposed to be there for 3 weeks. And it wound up being...
You didn't leave.
I didn't leave. And it wasn't because we were all making money. I was making money. Chef's Club was making money. Chefs were calling them to do other residencies. And it also helped me, I don't want to say prove myself, but I would get a lot of conversation from people like, oh, you're only good in Harlem. And I'm like, well, what does that mean?
Well.
And I was like, well, I've got a lot of accolades in Harlem, but this moment at Chef's Club kind of was like, okay, now what are you gonna say?
Yeah.
So, and if somebody came in the dining room at Chef's Club, I was able to raise the money for FieldTrip. And then my goal when I was in Chef's Club, I kind of envisioned that this concept would work perfectly in a hotel. I don't know why I thought that, but it would work somewhere. And my landlord from Harlem had a friend from another hospitality group that was looking to expand. My lawyer told me I should bid on this Henry project. And we both were bidding on it at the same time. And I just threw a bone in the room and I said, well, why don't we just do it together? And they kind of looked at me like, well, I was working on them with something else. And I was like, why don't we do this together to see how it works? And I landed with the gig at the Henry. So it's getting where you fit in. That's how I look at it. And I kind of know where I want to be. I have some team members around me where they believe I should be. And then I just kind of finesse that to see what's right. And the Henry's been really successful. I didn't go in there, I didn't do the dining room over, I didn't change anything. I put a JJ neon light up. I put some pink napkins. I play a 90s hip hop playlist. And people come in there and think it's this brand new restaurant. And it works. But the feeling of the restaurant reminded me of Chef's Club. Like it was wood, it was a slightly open kitchen. It's right by the train. Anybody can come from like my fans from Brooklyn and Harlem can come. If you live downtown and you never wanted to come to Harlem to eat my food because you felt it was too far, now you don't have an excuse because I'm right here. So all these things were going through my mind when I was working on that project.
I had the image of you holding your neon sign, walking up 6th Avenue from Chef's Club in Soho to the Henry and just like hanging it up and, you know, putting on an apron and just cooking.
It kind of worked like that a little bit.
Yeah. You know, for some, you know, as you've been thinking about raising money, starting your own, starting FieldTrip, whatnot, was having the opportunity to step into a hotel, which, you know, I would imagine the challenges of real estate weren't quite what they were in other places. Was having the hotel F&B element there an easier step, and let it take care of some problems you'd rather not deal with, or am I oversimplifying things?
This is different problems.
Yeah.
Different issues.
Yeah.
Like having to be open at 5:30 in the morning for breakfast. That's
room service.
No, they don't have room service. We don't have room service there. They don't want it. I want it. I love room service.
Yeah.
I think people, our industry, we get off the plane, we're running, we want a good mini bar, we want good room service from time to time. But yeah, just different obstacles in a brick and mortar. But I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I think the industry is going in a different direction in some areas. Also, the opportunities that my peers get, I don't get. So some things that I typically would think twice about because I know another opportunity would come, I have to use an opportunity to create another opportunity. So that's how I kind of looked at the Henry project. And also, I mean, the solid food I cook, there's no home for it anywhere, right? So to say that there's this home for it in Nomad, Midtown, on 31st Street, also opens up the doors for other chefs that look like me. So it's a bigger play.
To touch on that a bit, you were at Cecil for a while, and relationship with Alexander Smalls up there. As you've grown as a chef, how have you looked to mentors? How have you tried to identify mentors, and how's it been different than some of your peers?
I mean, working with Alexander and Richard Parsons, I call that grad school. You work with one of the most powerful men in the world, Richard Parsons, and you have Alexander, this super creative guy that can think of anything that's been everywhere anybody can imagine or wants to go. I would say now, as I grow, I do look for mentors. I haven't found a mentor, but I have reached out to people on different platforms that are not food. And I don't think everybody wants to mentor. Like, I will mentor any day. But I don't think everybody wants to mentor. I'm lucky enough to still, I mean, my mom and my dad work off emotion, so my dad is always a mentor to me in certain instances. Chris, who used to be at Food and Wine, was a mentor when selecting the name of the FieldTrip restaurant. So I talk to people sometimes in a mentor role, but they're not actually the mentor. They just don't know I'm mentoring. I don't know the right word for it that I would use, but I'm using them as a mentor in that moment.
Yeah. They don't know you're a mentee.
I'm their mentee then. Yes.
When you think about beyond mentors, but just kind of network for Black chefs. Being able to call and be like, hey, I'm looking for like when you left the Cecil, hey, where can I cook next? What are my opportunities? You talk about your colleagues and contemporaries. They have these opportunities, and some of that comes just because they're treated differently because they're white guys and have deeper networks there. How do you go about like building networks?
I mean, I've been lucky. I work for like Drew Neprion. Like, I'll get invited to Drew's birthday party, right? Like, that's a network within itself. So you're in the room now with everybody, and you'll meet somebody. I don't think a lot of my peers, or I'll take my sous chef for an example. Like, he worked for Missy at a Voce years ago. I don't understand why he's not a CDC somewhere. He's been working in French bread kitchens. I won't let him go. But I don't think, it's just hard. I don't want to say it's hard to say. It's just that we don't always have a seat at the table. And how do you get a seat at the table, right? And my job is to make sure that my peers will have a seat at the table because they're very talented. They've had an education. I'm very lucky that a man, Alexander Smalls, called me because at one time, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was working at Morgan Stanley Executive Dining Room. My mentor at that time was Ed Brown because he was the president of RA. I left there. I went on a cooking show because I didn't know what else to do. I hated going on a cooking show, Rocco's Dinner Party. And then Alexander called me, but I probably wouldn't be in New York today if Alexander didn't call me to say, hey, I think you have something, let's work it out. I probably would have been going to South Carolina working for Sean Brock or going to California. I would be on I might not even be sitting here right now. But I know that every opportunity that I get, I have to work a little bit harder because I don't get the second chance that my peers get. And me and my peers have this conversation. I mean, me and PJ from Scampi have this conversation all the time. Went to college together. He was able to raise 3 times the amount of money I was able to raise. He didn't know why it was taking me so long to raise money. He was like, your paperwork is tight. Like, but he had Michael White to open up his Rolodex to say, let me help you. I can't get any more money, but call these couple of people and potentially they'll write you a check.
In terms of your cooking, I remember the first time I went up to the Cecil, and full disclosure, my wife wrote helped write the cookbook. So there's a little nepotism at play.
Between Harlem and Heaven.
Between Harlem and Heaven, which is awesome. But I remember you came down and sat at the table and just kind of like walked us through the menu because it was so kind of unfamiliar, and a lot of the stuff you were putting on the table were things that were that you had your touches. How did you kind of develop your own style like that? And as you've now gone to Henry and starting Field Trip, how are you refining that?
Cecil was all based on one trip I took with Alexander to Ghana, spent 60 days there, learning more about myself than about the food, realizing that I grew up in the African diaspora, my mom being West Indian and Puerto Rican, my dad being African American. I didn't realize I grew up in this household with all this food flavor. And then I was like, okay, now I'm able to cook this food. But from my time at the Cecil to now, I've actually traveled to, I would consider like 5 meccas of the world of food. So Singapore, Israel, India, Ghana, and I'm probably forgetting somewhere I went. But I've actually so I cooked in Israel, right? I cooked in a kosher kitchen in Israel at the Waldorf for 15 days. I actually saw a lot of West African influences in Israel. I went to Singapore and I saw this melting pot of culture. So I was able to pull these flavors. I visited rice farms in India. So I was able to pull these flavors from these places. And then that helped refine my cooking. But also my cooking now is truly on me. It's not on somebody telling me if I can put that on the menu or not. Or no, I want it to taste different, make it spicier, more salt, it needs more acid. I'm truly the final say, so everything is truly my food. Or my culinary director is hearing me say those things to her. So yeah, it's a little bit more refined. It's a little bit more focused on Africa, the Caribbean. It's truly who I am in moments of my life.
Got a couple minutes for questions. First one, being in a hotel, and you might not have been there long enough to know, but being in a hotel, is it difficult to convince locals to give your restaurant a try? Is customer loyalty more of a challenge there?
No, I went to a conference where the vice president of food and beverage for Marriott was talking at, and he said as they open up more and more hotels, they're trying to make restaurants more geared to the locals versus asking, where should I go eat, right? And I think the greatest thing about being at the Henry is that locals are coming in and then the hotel guests are eating there because of the locals, not vice versa. Like most hotel, and I'm also in the lobby of the hotel, so you have to walk by the restaurant, so you don't even realize you're in a hotel, which makes it really cool. So no, I'm very lucky that 67% of the business right now is locals and the other 33 is hotel guests.
Do you expect to see a continued shift towards fast casual over full service? Is that what customers want? And on the flip side, is that also, does the business model work? You said the P&L works a little better for that now.
I mean, the P&L for us worked better for that based off the money we raised. And based off, we didn't raise money to take salaries for the QSR. We looked at it as a true business. I think the industry, it all depends on where you're at in the world, where you're at in the country. I think QSRs will always work well in urban markets. I think full service restaurants will always work in the suburbs. I think big brand QSRs will always work in the suburbs too. But you'll see the market go up and down, in my opinion. I mean, QSRs in downtown, there's no more place for them to go. They have to start going uptown or outer boroughs, or they have to go to a new market. But full service restaurants are working. The Smith is working, right? You see it open in DC, and then you see them sign a lease 2 weeks later, or they already signed 2 leases, and you didn't know it. So it's all based on what your model is.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.